welcome to Felicity Yarn Studio. If you're new here, my name is Zoe and I am a fiber artist coming to you from the foothills of North Carolina. So I am a knitter, a spinner, a sometimes crocheter, and I also dye yarn. So if you want to find me on social media or links to anything that I talk about today, that will all be in the description box down below. Because I'm really horrible at remembering names of things and I'm probably too lazy to put them on the screen here. So all of that information is in the description box down below. And that's where you'll also find my Etsy shop with the aforementioned hand-dyed yarn. So that's really the only kind of announcement that I have to make up at the top, is that there are still advent calendars available in the shop. About half of them have sold so far. So I am very close to finishing dyeing on those. After today, I'll have 2 mini colors left to dye, as well as the full-size skeins if you are ordering that package. And after they are done, being dyed up, I will be packaging them and starting to ship them in early October. So yeah, once I've finished dyeing them and I've gotten all the ones that are pre-orders shipped, I will then switch the listing on Etsy to ready to ship advent calendars. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's the only announcement that I have up here at the top, because I have quite a bit to share with you guys today. I have 5 whole finished knitting objects to share. All of my whips are also knitting. I don't have any spinning. I don't have any crochet. I've just been in a knit groove lately. So why don't we go ahead and dive right in with the first finished object. That is going to be my Bennet sister shawl. And let's see. This was a long-term whip that was sitting unfinished in timeout because I had run out of yarn to finish this thing, but it is now done. This is a pattern by Lindsay Fowler. I've knit mine primarily out of yarn from Farmer's Daughter's Fibers. The main color is, I believe, called Paul Newman, and that is what the base color is for the whole shawl. And then the skein of mohair that I held on this half, I want to say, is her Elkhorn colorway. So if you've been around the last few episodes, you'll know that I needed to dye up some yarn to finish this. I ran out on this last little end here. And yeah, I actually had a skein of mohair that was very similar in my stash that wound up working perfectly for this. From what I remember of knitting this, because I started it like a year ago, it was quite a pleasurable knit. It was a nice, relaxing, like, don't have to pay too much attention, but there is a little bit of interest along the way. So you're doing garter stitch until you get to the change to where there's some stockinette as well, to give that kind of like textural shape across the shawl. And then again, the second half you hold with the skein of mohair. She does have a note in the pattern about, managing your yarn and how to avoid running out of yarn at the end. And I did pay attention to it, and I did kind of heat it for a few rows, but I don't know, I guess I didn't allow myself enough wiggle room there. I did make my tassels first before I started the shawl so that I would have enough yarn for that. In hindsight, I think I would have rather had all of the same yarn on the shawl and then maybe found something very close to make the tassels with, but it is what it is. Naomi, who is the yarn curator, she's my sister. If you've never been here before and don't know that, you should go check out her channel. But she has also knit this shawl, and she and I were texting, and she kept giving me crap about not finishing this because of running out of yarn, and she was like, just use whatever to finish it. But we were joking that,
that's not nice.
Siri thought that I was talking about her, not Naomi. Anyway, where was I? Bennet sisters. So Naomi and I had been joking that if the shawl is Bennet sisters from, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and one half is Lizzie and one half is Jane, then this little corner here is Lydia coming in to barge in at the end and get her little 5 minutes of, spotlight attention at the end.
I want to go to
So it's still a Bennet sister, just probably, you know, more than what was intended by the pattern designer. All right, so that was finished object number 1. Number 2 is going to be another shawl, and this is my Melting Marl shawl by West Knits, Stephen West. And I knit mine out of the Advent kit from Artemis Yarns. That was 2 years ago. It was her Wild Nymph Advent calendar. So as you can see, it's a lovely, gorgeous, perfect fade from this dark, deep, kind of eggplanty purple into the pinky mauves. It fades nicely into this kind of teal green, blue gray section at the bottom. So this was an absolute pleasure to knit because of the yarn and because I really enjoyed this pattern as well. I really enjoy Stephen West's I really enjoy his almost more simple patterns. I really like the 2 strands of fingering weight held together for a DK or light worsted weight. That's something that I've really been into lately, as you will see in some more of the kind of finished objects and things, whips that I have to share with you guys. This reminded me a lot of knitting his Dotted Rays shawl, because again, it's just garter stitch, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but there is a little bit of interest along the way because you have to account for increase rows, and you can change the yarn at any time. It's another one of those patterns that's really up to you for as far as determining, you know, the color. And I really leaned into the melting marlness of this pattern. I've seen some on Ravelry that are a little more kind of stripy looking, but I thought that the Advent kit lent itself well to this type of pattern. So I want to say that the pattern called for 450 grams of yarn to get the like smaller size. This is the smaller size, and actually being that I used 24 minis that were 20 grams each, that's 480 grams of yarn. I didn't even get to the final increase for the smaller size. So it's, as you can see, it's still plenty big. It's actually any bigger than this, and it might have been a little bit too big, kind of bordering on that like small blanket size. So yes, this turned out perfectly. There's a cat dismounting up here. I think that I did get a few of the minis out of order down here in the blue section when I came back and looked at it, but the only other thing that I changed was I moved some of the like purpley grays from the top of the fade here down to the bottom. It looks fine. Even the blues that are out of order look fine. And lastly, I did use the Clasped Weft join for mine, and I do still have a few little ends poking out that keep catching my eye that I need to trim back a little bit. That's the nice thing about that join is there's no ends to weave in. Like I said, like this one I'll probably just trim back a little bit closer. Overall, this was a really enjoyable pattern. I will probably be making another one at some point in the future. My problem is I have a gazillion shawls that I hardly ever wear, but I really enjoy knitting them. So I don't know, maybe I need to like clean out my chest and gift some shawls this year for Christmas. Not this one, because I love this fade. This is too pretty, and it was an advent calendar that I treated myself to. So I have ordered from Artemis Yarns this year for another advent kit, but it's not a mini kit. It is a 5 skein, full-size skein set, so you're supposed to open one every weekend through December. I just didn't want any more minis. I love minis. I love collecting minis. I have plenty of them, and I dye them. I just felt like having 5 full-size skeins that were a planned fade would be a better use in the future. So maybe like for a garment or something. I don't know. I just wanted something different this year, so that's what I went with. Moving right along to finished object number 3, I have finished a pair of socks, and these are the Thickmas Socks. That is a pattern by Summer Lee. So I have knit these out of some yarn from the Cat Lady. The colorway is called Mayhem. It is on her sock yarn base. So yes, this is another one of those patterns where you hold 2 strands of fingering or sock weight yarn to get around a DK weight gauge. This pattern actually has a lot of variations written in it. So there's like a cabled version. There's a version where you knit inside out. So you have the garter ridges on the outside and the smooth stockinette part on the inside of the foot. I know that for some people who have like textural issues, they prefer to knit their socks that way or wear their socks that way. I went with the most basic vanilla version of this. She does write for like contrasting heels and toes and cuffs in it, but I just wanted some solid house socks here. I've been wearing a lot of DK weight socks around the house recently, and I wanted a few more pairs before the cold weather really gets here. Our house gets really cold. It's a split level, and the bottom layer, the bottom floor, yeah, in the winter time, it just gets really chilly. We have gas logs in the one living room, but anyway, small tangent there. These were really fun, quick, easy knit. If you are new to sock knitting, if you're curious about trying socks, I would highly recommend this pattern. It's really well written. You get all of the basics on like how to knit a sock, or like, you know, each element is broken down for you. The heel flap and gusset is written in the pattern. I have started a second pair. I don't think I'm going to share them today because I just got so much other stuff to share, but on the second pair that I've started, I am doing a German short row heel. I don't think that is an option in that particular pattern, but again, there's a lot of variations that you can apply written in that pattern. So she's got some other really cute sock and other patterns. I don't remember off the top of my head. I just remember scrolling through her Ravelry page and being like, oh, that's cute. That's cute. So yeah, I really enjoy knitting these. Whipped out a sock. I can probably get a sock on DK weight done in like less than 3 days. So less than a week to knit a pair of socks. So highly, highly recommend, because I did only do these one at a time. I wanted to do 2 at a time, but as I was working from 2 balls of yarn to begin with, I thought that working from both ends of 2 different balls to knit 2 socks at a time was going to get into a huge tangled mess. So I kept things simple. Knitting 1 at a time really wasn't that big of a deal. The trick is casting on the second sock right away. Don't let yourself think about it. Just go ahead and do it. Aside from knitting 2 socks at a time, that is the only other cure that I have ever found for second sock syndrome. Lastly, the only other thing that I wanted to mention was these were full-size skeins when I started, and I weighed them when I was done. I have about 54 grams left on each ball of yarn. So I have enough to at least get a second pair of socks in this size. I think I made myself the adult small size here. So I probably will knit a second pair of these, and maybe on the second go around, I will try some contrast, at least some cuffs, maybe toe and cuff down the road. My next finished object is yet another pair of socks. So let me switch out these sock blockers here for you. Boom. Yes, so these are just a pair of vanilla socks, regular old vanilla socks. 1 strand of sock weight yarn knit on size 0 needles. Actually, I usually use a US size 1. These are made out of leftovers from my Ori cardigan that I made out of Kindred red yarn in her Crystalline colorway. The contrast heels are done in some Spectrum fiber. I don't remember the name of this colorway. It was in the advent calendar that I got. I think that was the same year I bought the Artemis calendar that I showed you earlier. Yes, I bought 2 advent calendars 2 years ago. These actually, I started these for myself. I did do 72 stitches because I was doing the size 0 needles. I had been knitting and I was about 3/4 of the way through the foot of the sock when one of my non-knitting friends contacted me, and she's like, hey, I love your work, I love your colors, I really want to support you, but I don't know how. And I was like, well, I've actually been thinking a lot about her, and I was like, you know, these socks have been speaking to me and I wanted to send them to you anyway. And she's like, oh my God, I love this colorway. I was like, I wish it was mine, but it is not. But she's really sweet. She's very knit worthy, an old college buddy of mine. I made her a hat and a scarf out of some acrylic yarn, and not shaming anybody for using acrylic yarn at all. But she has been wearing that for like the past 10 years. And I was like, girl, we can do better than that. Like, I am going to send you this. Maybe she is somebody that I need to go dig around and find a shawl to send to as well. So yeah, it was really fortuitous that she contacted me when she did. So I was like, all right, send me, you know, your shoe size and some measurements, and I will finish these up with you in mind. So she did. I love my friend, and I'm more than happy to knit her pair of socks. But she wears a size 11, so these are a little bit large. They don't quite fit on my sock blockers properly. So I looked up the measurements and I had her confirm some things with me, and I was like, all right, I'm doing it. So I had been using probably 3 or 4 little leftover partial skeins that I had from making my cardigan. I think when I weighed them all, I had around 70 grams of yarn. So if I had finished making these for myself, that would have been more than enough to finish. But I did have to dip into one of the 3 leftover skeins that I had from that. So that's what the very top is there. I was alternating all these little partial skeins through the body. And again, I just did a afterthought heel on this for her. Vanilla socks. I have kind of started an unofficial policy here where I'm really not going to talk about socks unless they are finished objects, because I don't know. I've knit a gazillion socks. I feel like once, you know, you knit a pair of socks, there's not a ton to talk about unless, I don't know, I knit boring vanilla socks like 95% of the time. I want to branch out and maybe try color work or more like cabled or stitch pattern socks. But yeah, to me the appeal of vanilla socks is that I don't have to think. I can just keep going and they knit themselves. Probably the only thing of interest on these is that I did do a few increases on the calf for her, just to ensure that they would fit her upper leg, because I made them a wee bit long. So anyway, now that I have shown them on the podcast, I can get them off into the mail for her. So yeah, these are my little friendship socks that I'll be sending out. I said I wasn't going to talk about them, but this is the Thickmas sock that I have started for myself using the skein that I dipped into for the last pair. So I will talk about these probably on the next episode, but yes, I really enjoy this pattern. All right, so last finished object, which will kind of roll me into some of my works in progress. I finished a Musselbara hat. Well, I started and finished a Musselbara hat since the last time that I recorded. This hat is for my hubby, Jason. It is knit out of Spun Right Round and her Squish DK base. Oop. It's rather large because he has a larger head than I do, but yes, this is in a DK weight yarn. The colorway is called Quake. I don't know how much of this is getting on screen. So this is a pattern by Isolde Teague. I've knit it before. I'm sure if you watch any other knitting podcasts, then you will have seen it making the rounds. It is knit from end to end as well. So you cast on one end and increase out, and then you just knit until you have like 20 something inches. And then once you have reached your desired length, just fold up the other end and shove it in the inside here. So it is extremely warm. We have a visitor. Hello. You here to help? You gonna show off? You wanna model? You gonna say hello? Yes, given that there are 2 layers of knitting to this hat, it is really warm and insulated. That has been some of my knocks on some hat patterns that I have knit in the past. They're just not quite insulated and warm enough for me. I really like something to keep my ears nice and warm. So I had decided to knit this hat for Jason because well, let me backtrack. So I had decided to knit this hat for Jason because when I was down in Florida earlier this year visiting with Naomi, I had picked up 1 skein of this yarn from Pan Banged Knits in Brooksville. And I picked it up kind of as a souvenir skein. At the time, I thought that it looked pretty similar to the yarn that I had started a pair of mitts for Jason in, and that is this yarn. So they have the same colors, they're just dyed a little bit differently. This yarn is from Olan Yarns, and it is the colorway Rua, don't know. So these are the mitts that I had started for him it was the end of winter when I started these for him. Last time you guys saw this, I was almost done. I hadn't finished the thumb. That was all that was needing to be done on this first mitt here. I am putting some stainless steel thread on the fingertips so that it will be touch reactive for him. He can still use his phone. I went on a whole tangent about how that was like setting off textural issues for me, but anyway, these are the char mitts, and they are a pattern by Andrea Rangel. So since I have knit the hat, again, I really just wanted something a little bit thicker and a little bit kind of satisfying. I have since pulled out the mittens, and I put the thumb on the first one, and I did go ahead and get the cuff started on the second one. So again, I was kind of suffering that second, it's not sock syndrome here, it's second mitt syndrome. I don't think that's a thing. But yes, I am almost done with this cuff here. It is a braided rib cuff, and I really enjoy this braided rib. I forgot how much I had enjoyed it. It's kind of a faux cable technique where you slip a stitch, knit front and back, and then slip the slip stitch back over the one that you just knit front and back, so you keep your stitch count the same, but it creates this really nice textural detail for a ribbing. Then on the hand or the palm part of the mitt, you're doing essentially what is eye of partridge stitch, if you've ever knit that on the heel of a sock, where it's like knit one, slip one on one row, and then the next row you just knit even. So again, you're getting a lot of texture on these, and I think it kind of gives a slightly thicker fabric for a mitt to keep the hands warm. So I really want to get these done for him before, again, the cold weather settles in, which I've probably got another month or 2 to get these done. Once the cuff is done, honestly, the hand part flies by. I got the 4 fingers done like in a night sitting on the couch next to him because I kept having him try it on to make sure they were all the right length. This thumb did come out a little bit short. I had him try it on, but it's still, when I you know, finally cast off and had him try it on, it's a little bit tight, so I may have to go back and add a few more rows to this thumb. So this is another one of those projects that has been lingering kind of in timeout, hibernation, limbo since like late winter, early spring. And yeah, I really want to go ahead and get these finished before the cold weather gets here. So it's just another project that I am trying to get closure on. For whatever reason, it was super easy for me to just knit this hat. I don't think I mentioned, I started off with the first skein that I purchased down in Florida, and then I got to about here, And I was like, ooh, I don't think that I'm gonna have enough yarn to make this long enough. So I purchased another skein of yarn off of Spun Right Round's website. I did alternate them all the way up to about here. So I got way more than I was expecting to. I guess if I hadn't have alternated, I would have only gotten another like 3 inches out. But since the second skein that I had a lot more of the kind of like gray tones versus some of these like rust color tones, which I really like the rust color. I guess Jason can choose which side he likes better. I'm choosing to make this the outside. Yeah, I needed 2 skeins of DK to make this work for his size and for the gauge that I was knitting at, which to be fair, the pattern does say that you need like 300, 400 yards for the gauge that I was knitting at, which I want to say was 5 to 6 inches per inch. Hubris got the best of me. I thought that I could get away with 1 skein of DK, which maybe if I was knitting a smaller size, like for myself, I could get away with it. But yeah, this is what I have left over of the second skein. So what are you gonna do? So yes, that's my finished object. This is my first whip that I'm sharing with you guys. Yeah, let me move right along. I guess next I'm going to share with you guys the test knit that I started because, you know, I don't have enough going on in my life. Why not go ahead and sign up for test knit? I've been really stumped on what I want to knit for myself here lately. I've really wanted to start a garment. I've dyed up a few new colorways and I've really wanted to work with them. But nothing was really like speaking to me. There wasn't a pattern that I was super in love with. And then I was scrolling Instagram and Jessie Mae Martinson, she was putting out a call for test knitters for a new design that she'll have coming out in October, and that is called the Northwoods V-neck sweater. I'm going to put a picture on the screen of what it is. It is a DK weight sweater. It is knit seamlessly from the top down. So, ooh, I lost some stitches. I am knitting mine out of a new colorway that I dyed up in the last few weeks. This kind of came as a byproduct of all the advent colors that I've been dyeing. I've been working with a lot of warm tones. I'm normally much more of a cool tone person, but I don't know. I've really been feeling this kind of like champagne, buttery, yellow, soft peach. There's some soft peach tones in here. Colors. I bought a few new dyes to play with as well for advent calendar dyeing, and so it inspired me to make this new shop colorway, which I have named Seashell. Here it is on sock yarn. It probably doesn't look like much. It probably just looks like an undyed skein of yarn, which I don't have one next to me, but I promise it is like a soft buttery yellow with some very light peach undertones as well. So yes, that's called Seashell. It is in the shop on sock and DK weight yarn. So that is what I'm knitting this out of, is my DK weight base called DK Merino. I'm not super creative with the names of my bases. I just call them what they are. So yes, this is the start of my sweater. I have knit the back part. It's curling up a little bit here, and then the right front is done, and I will probably knock out the left front today, and then you join and work in the round for the bottom of the body, and then obviously sleeves. So yeah, this has been really enjoyable so far. It is a new construction technique for me. I think the closest thing that I have made to something like this is the Elton, which is actually intended to be a cardigan, but I made mine as just a complete top-down sweater. I kind of modified that, but this is a very kind of similar construction. I haven't done a ton of these, so there is some short row shaping on the shoulder and around the neck to kind of, you know, compensate for the curves that you have here on your body. and then, you know, the increases go along the V-neck here. I did try alternating skeins in the back, on the back, when I was just working flat back and forth. But it kind of messed up one of the mods that I am doing, which is to slip the first stitch of each row in order to help me have a clean pickup when I pick up for the sleeves and for the neckline eventually. That's not written in the pattern, but it is kind of something that I am trying to work into my knitting more frequently, because I find that I have some problems occasionally with picking up stitches around the edging of things. It just makes it for a nice, neater edge. But where I was alternating the skeins, it was getting really tight and puckered. And honestly, I don't even really think that I needed it. Like, I can't tell a difference to where I was alternating and where I wasn't. So this is kind of the nice, neat edge that you get for picking up stitches if you slip that first stitch. And that's literally all I'm doing, is slipping it. So one of the nice things that I'll say about test knitting for Jessie May is she does say that you can make whatever modifications you want as far as like the shape of the garment goes, if you want it cropped shorter or longer, just to, you know, provide the feedback for what you did, to measure your yarn usages very closely, which is pretty standard practice for test knitting. But yeah, otherwise this is working up really quickly. Again, I know that the deadline for the test knitting stuff is October 4th. I don't know if she's mentioned a release date, but I'm assuming it will be not too long after that. So keep an eye out for this. It's going to be a really cute pattern. I think I showed the picture already, but obviously I've chosen not to do stripes for mine. I'm just doing a solid one color version because, I don't know, stripes aren't a huge part of my wardrobe personally. Nothing against them. I just don't tend to gravitate towards them. I've really been wanting just some nice neutral basic pieces for my wardrobe, and yeah, when I saw this I was like, perfect, this is what I want to cast on. Oh, apparently I pulled out my gauge swatches, so I did gauge swatch for this. I got gauge by going up a needle size, but I wasn't really a fan of the looseness of the fabric. I liked the fabric that I was getting, that actually I knit with the recommended needle size, which was a US size 7, so I went with that. Again, there was a note on the initial pattern send out that, you know, if you needed to adjust your size or whatever, that's fine. So I'm still doing the size that I signed up for, which was the 1X size. I believe that should give me, if I had gotten gauge, that would have given me a bust of 52 inches, which would have been 5 inches of positive ease. So I'm assuming with the slightly tighter gauge that it will give me less ease and closer to like 1 to 2 inches of positive ease, which is actually where I prefer for my garments to fit, especially something like this V-neck sweater. I think a tighter gauge is what I would want. So again, she's very flexible as far as, you know, what you want your gauge and your fit to be, no matter what size you're knitting. So I think it's all going to work out in the end. I also find that when I swatch, sometimes the swatch isn't always super accurate, because I mean, you're talking about like 3 grams of yarn here versus like 5 skeins of yarn, and it tends to weigh itself down. It tends to stretch a little bit more than, say, just a gauge swatch will do. So not saying that you shouldn't swatch, I'm just saying that sometimes there is some variation. So I expect this all to work out. Just, you know, echoing back to the last episode where I talked about fit and gauge and all of that, I made some executive decisions here after swatching and thinking about how I wanted this finished object to fit me. So yeah, this will be my kind of main knitting for the next few weeks until, you know, this test knit is over and I get advent calendars finished dyeing and packed up. I do have one other thing that I think I'm going to pull out and share as far as knitting goes, just for a quick update. So I just wanted to share the progress on my giant garter squish blanket here. Garter squish is just what I am calling this thing. It does not have a official pattern that I am following. All right, here we go. So the last time I showed this to you guys, I was having a quandary about the size of this thing and wanting to use up as much yarn as possible. So I did rip back. I ripped back a lot. I ripped back to where the stitch marker is here. So this is it. I'm going with the size. If I don't use all my yarn, I don't use all my yarn. I will find other uses for it. This is how wide this thing is. I can't even get it all on screen. So I have started working the even rows to start gaining the length on it. I am finally somewhat past where I was before I ripped back. So yeah, this is hard to tell. So this is the last little bit of those two colors held together, and then this partial skein I will hold with this skein, and I think once I finished all of the kind of even rows with these two balls of yarn, that's when I will start decreasing on this thing. So yeah, now that that decision is made and I am moving back forward, I know it doesn't look like much or look like anything different because I literally just ripped back and reknit like all the yarn that I had last time. I'm getting there. No rush on this other than to potentially have it done for cooler weather. But this is all of the yarn that I have left to finish this thing. I don't even know if you can see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have plenty. I think I'm gonna use up like 95% of this yarn. So that's my garter squish blanket. I did also, in the meantime, while I was trying to figure out what to work on, get some progress done on my primrose jumper, and I'm gonna wait to pull that out until next time because I do kind of want to get just a little bit more progress on that before I show you guys. And I am still slowly in the background also working on my nephew's Battenberg crochet blanket. That's another one that is just kind of hard to show the progress on, and I think I want to be done with it before I pull it out for the podcast again. So the last two things that I have to share are, one's kind of knitting related, the other is not knitting, but they're both yarn related. Again, when I was kind of in a slump a few weeks ago, there were just things that weren't knitting that were calling to me. So a month or two ago, I want to say, I ordered a latch hook rug piece of backing and a hook off of Amazon. I want to say it was Artemis Yarns who posted on Instagram about using up all your little leftover bits of yarn that you have from, you know, the ties when you cut off a skein, or, you know, if you've got a little like 2 grams of yarn left from a ball of yarn, making a latch hook rug out of them. So I wanted to start small. I wasn't going to do a whole rug. I wanted to make myself a coaster, and boom, I finally finished this thing. It doesn't take that long to make. It was my very first time doing this, and I kind of messed up when I started it. So this is the back side. You might be able to see a little better here what's going on. I think what you're supposed to do is like start from the bottom and work your way up. Whereas like I just kind of started in the middle and started working out in various directions, which kind of made it a little bit hard to get in and like pull the yarn through and latch them and make the knot that was needed. Once I kind of figured a groove out though, it was fine. And my finishing is definitely not the neatest here. Like I need to do something about that. But again, I just wanted to make myself a little coaster as kind of a, you know, beginner project here. This is going to sit beside my bedside on my little end table. I have been using it and it's a little bit like flat and deflated looking because I've been using it. I think I might have left it a little bit too long. I might need to trim it down a little bit more because when like a cup sits on it, let's see if I can make it. It's a little bit wobbly and then like the yarn gets smooshed down. So I think I need to trim just a little bit more off of it and see. I don't know if anybody is a latch hook rug doer. I won't say expert. If you've made anything like this in the past, let me know if there's like a length that I need to be aiming for, or if it's, I mean, if that's just the way it is, that's fine too, because it's really pretty. Like, I don't know, this just appeals to me and speaks to me, kind of the random chaos, fuzzy chaos happening here. So what I'd really like to do eventually is make like a fuzzy wall hanging like this. I think it would be a really pretty wall tapestry to hang in the living room. So I have a grand plan in the back of my mind, and that might be kind of a more long-term project. I do want to practice and maybe make a few more coasters, coaster size projects, just to really get my hand at this. It's kind of one of those things that, like, when I'm tired of knitting or I don't really want to pull out the spinning wheel, I can just pull this out and work on it. It is a wee bit tedious as far as you're using like 2-inch pieces of yarn. I did hold 3 strands of fingering for each little square. So I don't know if that was too much. That might also be part of my problem. I might need to do like 2 strands of yarn. I was just kind of guessing because, again, I didn't follow any instructions or anything. I was just kind of going off of instinct here. I'm going to do a little bit more experimentation and kind of see what works best for this. But I really enjoyed it. It's also quite satisfying to trim this and like make it all nice and fuzzy and even. So that's one thing that I have been, you know, picking up when the knitting just isn't doing it for me. The second thing, and as I said, it's kind of knitting related. When I did the Would-Be Bag test knit last time, last time I shared it with you guys, I mentioned that I picked up an I-cord knitting machine. It's still on the needles here. I mentioned that I was interested in finding a use for this thing beyond just making an I-cord, and that a rug was kind of in the back of my mind. So I started cranking an I-cord and I started stitching it together to make a rug. It is turning out kind of as expected. As you can see, it's a little bit winding up a little bit kind of concave here. And yesterday I did hold it over some steam and then put something heavy on it to see if it would lay flat. And it does lay flat when you like put it on a flat surface. So it could work as a rug. I don't know, the more that it grows, if it's gonna just keep doing this, right? So I think what I'm gonna do is I have this much cord cranked still. It's less than a skein of DK weight yarn. This is what I have left. I might just crank the rest of this skein, finish stitching it together, and I might use it as like a hot pad or a trivet or something in the kitchen, and I might start over on my rug venture. I think what I need to do is less stitches as I join, because I started kind of skipping every few stitches around here, and as you can see, that lays fairly flat, that part does, but inside here where I was picking up like for every stitch, that's when I started to get this rounded shape. So if any of you like geometry minded people have any advice for me on this, let me know. I think it's geometry would be the right math for that. So yeah, I don't consider it a total fail. It's just, again, it's another experiment. I have tons of this yarn. It is some non-superwash DK weight yarn that I bought for the shop. It's a base that I'm probably not gonna carry. So yeah, I've got like 20 skeins just lying around, so I am comfortable making a rug and doing some experimentations with it. That is my kind of I-cord adventure here. Let me know if anybody has done anything like this, if you have any advice. I did kind of Google some things, and there was one lady on YouTube who was taking the I-cord and like chaining it by hand and then stitching them together, kind of like so. I'm not getting it tight enough, but once she like chained it, like if you were doing it as a crochet, then she was like coiling it and sewing it together. But I don't know, I wasn't a fan of the way that that looked and the way that that was turning out. I like this kind of solid piece of fabric look better. All right, y'all, that is going to do it for today's episode. Again, advent calendars are in the shop. I am trying to dye up some other kind of regular colorways and get them stocked as well, kind of slowly but surely. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that is generally where I post, you know, what is new in the shop, as well as what I have been working on. I will probably be back in early October with a finished object video for that Northwoods v-neck, you know, with my pattern breakdown and my knitting experiences with that. Otherwise, if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave me a comment, turn on notifications. You know the drill. I really appreciate you guys sticking around with me today, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. I have knit mine out of yarn primarily from Farmer's Daughter's Vibe.
A whole camp full of soldiers.
I really enjoy Stephen West's so it is a DK weight sweater. Hello, sir.